Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Today's Sunday chat does include orchid stuff. It's supposed to be my Sunday orchid chat. There's more or less depending on how I feel and what I want to talk about. Sometimes there's very little orchid stuff, sometimes there's a lot. Sometimes it's 15 minutes heading up towards an hour, sometimes it's 35, 40. So it varies a lot. And I like to keep it a little bit unexpected. You all know those that have been following know the general format. It is a chatty video. It's not looking at individual plants very often. It is a chat. That's the point of it. You know, life and the universe and stuff. Yeah, today I'm going to have a brief chat about all of the genera that I've got. And how they're generally doing as a group. Yeah, we shall see. And I will go into more or less detail depending on possibly the numbers I've got. So that's that. Health stuff. Well, keep taking the tablets. Well, yes. There isn't much else to say. The last blood test I had was specifically to see if my blood thinners were okay. You know, in other words, doing what they're supposed to do. So it was a more tuned in test rather than the general whole thing, which was one of the previous ones I had. And the only thing that was commented on, everything was within the normal range where it's supposed to be, except for my platelet count. So I had to look that up. I'm not a medical person. But basically those are the little blighters that help your blood clot. Well, I'd have thought the object of taking blood thinners is to stop them doing their job. Basically the range was 150 to something or other, 400 odd. That's what's deemed normal. And mine was 148. That's 2 below. It's not 50 below or 100 below, it was 2. And it just commented it. It didn't say any further action or anything. So I'm just assuming that, you know, the tablets are doing their job. I haven't had any notification of any full-blown inspections or anything coming up. I know I will have an annual proper checkup. But nowadays, the way our NHS workings, that might be nothing more than a phone call, which I still don't believe is proper. You need to see somebody's face, you need to see them speaking, you need to see their physical condition, whether they're losing weight, getting all skinny, turning yellow, all that. You can't do any of that on the phone, can you? No. There's no good saying you can. It's just a cop-out. But that's how it is, and you have to bear in mind it's free. So we'll put up with probably what we get. That's that. We won't do politics today because it gets up some people's noses. I will say though, when I did have a little bit of I put a warning out. I said there are strong views in this video. There is a group of people associated possibly with a certain individual perhaps, I don't know, that have gone missing. How petty can you get? I'll leave it at that. Yeah, silliness. Total silliness. Maybe it goes with the person we were talking about, perhaps, I don't know. You can get deep into that sort of stuff if you're not careful. And I must admit, probably an orchid channel's not the place. Not time or place and all that sort of stuff. So we probably won't be doing much of it ever again. We might come back to the subject when the world's about to end. But we'll see. As we're still around to talk about it, and there's still a YouTube going on, you know, that hasn't been banned or stopped. It's a good job it's not made in China, isn't it? Right, what else is going on? Things coming up. Next Saturday is my trip to the Mathers Foundation, second trip this year. It's the first time I've done 2 trips in a year. Since they first opened their doors and had some open days, I have been every year. I think that's 4 now. Yeah, I think, I can't remember, but I've done 2 this year simply because I have a new genus, sorry, the Pleones, and they have the National Collection. And during my last visit, there wasn't a lot open. There was lots more to come. So I thought, well, if I go back a bit later, I had a chat when would be the best time to come back out of the 2 remaining open days, and was told that this Saturday would probably either see some of them starting to go over, or the whole room would be at its peak. And I thought, well, that's got to be worth seeing. And of course, filming for you good people. They're not the easiest types in the world to film, I must admit, because a lot of them do that sort of thing. You know, they hang over slightly, and in addition to that, you know, a lot of them are only that tall off a waist-high bench. So you've almost got to go round on your knees to film them properly. No, we're not doing that. We don't do knees nowadays. They don't do so good. And you'll be pleased to hear, those of you that caught the fact that I do have a rather painful knee at the moment, and it wasn't the gardening that did it. It was indirectly. You could say it was the gardening's fault, because if I didn't have all my tools out when it came on to rain, I wouldn't have had to hurry to put them back in the shed, and I wouldn't have had to rush back in through this door immediately behind me and not get it quite far enough open before I walked through it. So the edge of the door went straight down across my knee, and it still twangs, it's still not right. So it hasn't gone a funny colour, but that's probably because it's bone, isn't it? That's something else you get with blood thinners. You get little marks appear, slightest knock, you know, you just got to catch your hand on the door handle or something, yeah, purple next day. Have to put up with all that. Right, so Mather's trip this Saturday. The following weekend, Hannah's down. That will be a gardeny type of weekend, weather permitting, obviously. Neither of us do gardening in the rain. An amount of it, in fact a reasonable amount of it, I'll have already done by then, I suspect. Again, weather permitting, because I've got weekdays, you know. But there are some bigger jobs that involve getting the steps out and, you know, larger tools and stuff like that. I would rather have somebody with me when I do that sort of thing, just in case we have any mishaps. I have actually tipped a set of steps over by going 1 step too high and then stretching. So I have actually come off the steps before, but I was a lot younger then and I bounced better. Probably don't bounce at all now. Right, so that's that. That's what's coming up. Work in here continues sometimes at a rate of knots. I mean, I attacked the Coelogynes and did the work on all of them that needed doing in a set of 3 videos. One where we looked at them all and then started the work, which is the plan for that type of video. Look at a group of plants, whether it's a shelf or part of a shelf, or a genus, as it was in that case. Decide what work needs doing and then go on and do it. It's the way to G me up, to get me going. Otherwise it'll be June and too late, you know. So we're cracking on with that. And we did the first video plus a bit of work, then we did 2 other potting type videos, and then one of them was mounted, which was a separate video again. So the Coelogynes took 4 videos to actually get done. That probably won't happen again, because I don't think there's another genus that needs that volume of work for a start. We shall see. We do have a problem to my left hand side here in the Deesa tray. There are 5 rows of 4 pots, so there are 20 pots in there, and I think there's 5 or 6 with no green showing at all and no sign of life. I'm coming to the point where I'm going to declare them lost. It's difficult to work out why. Some of them were weak plants and they didn't take to repotting. Now, I followed the advice of the person I got them from. But you have to bear in mind they're not the strongest of plants. They can appear strong, but they are relatively fragile in the orchid world, especially their roots, very, very delicate. So I followed the advice I got, and you have to bear in mind that those plants were transported in a heat wave and arrived here in a heat wave. A lot of them then got split, and even the pots that got split didn't technically get repotted. They got, so if you take a large pot and you split it into, say 4, just for simplicity and simple maths, so you've got a quarter of the pot now in your hand, and you put it in the middle of a pot the same size as it came out of, and put new media around the outside. You've potted it on, you haven't repotted it. And everywhere I've read, including a specialist nursery that's since gone out of business because the guy became ill, basically says repot them properly. They don't like stale media, they don't like mineral build-up of any kind, salt build-up in the media. You know, you've got the general advice going over many years. And it basically says that, you know, after flowering, so that could be in the autumn, or I had a look on the Mathers Foundation behind the scenes, and Jim's got a video on Deesas, and he does it as well. They get taken out individually, as individual plants. Some of them then get group potted, the smaller plants perhaps, 4 or 5 spread around a pot. But the larger ones tend to get potted individually, so they've got a whole pot to themselves. But the old media gets knocked off and they get repotted properly. And I didn't do that with any of them. That may be the downfall, because you have to bear in mind the ones I got have also had a major change in environment. You know, they've gone from in one case, a specialist greenhouse, almost devoted to them. And they've come to here where, you know, it's not a devoted place. So the light level would be different, temperature range, airflow, difference between RO water and rainwater, and there is a difference. You know, RO water is effectively pure, rainwater isn't, despite what you think. It's got stuff in it, it's not pure. And that stuff is useful for plants in the main. You know, even though it's in minute amounts maybe, very difficult to measure those amounts because they're so low, but they're there, picked up from the atmosphere as it comes down. So, yes, so I'm going to be brave. They need a water change. Ideally, including Jim at Mathers, his are in a tray that holds water. I forget what expression he used. But basically the tray holds water and it's got a bung in it, so the water can be let out and completely changed relatively easily and quickly. I haven't got such a privilege. But yes, so they use rainwater on their Deesas at Mathers. In Jim's video, I will try and remember to ask, because in all the tours I've been to Mathers, I've never seen a Deesa, so I don't know where they've got them hidden away. Perhaps they've all died. But anyway, I will specifically ask Jim about, you know, okay, rainwater, flowing preferably, you know, coming in one end, going out the other, filtered, cycling round, you know, that type of thing. Because I think, although they use rainwater, I think it goes through an RO unit and has a pump system to keep it flowing, which is more akin to how they would grow. But I need to ask him if and when and what with he actually feeds them. They don't like mineral build-up in the pot, so they don't like any form of salt build-up. I mean, one guy who grows Deesa that I met at Burnham's, he said they don't like anything to do with minerals. So he said if you're going to feed them, it needs to be organic. Yeah, not mineral based. It needs to be organic. It doesn't leave you much, does it? Seaweed? Seaweed's not a feed, not as such. It's more a booster and it's a hormone-y type thing. It's not really a feed. For a plant to grow, the feed needs to have oxygen in it. Oxygen, nitrogen. Well, one of those anyway. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is take the bull by the horns, and one of the pots that I have more than one of, in other words, one of the ones that was split, so I've got more than one chance of survival, I'm going to take that pot, and even though it's not necessarily the right time of year, I'm going to break it gently apart and tease the plants out and pot them up in smaller pots separately. So where I have one pot, I might end up with half a dozen or more smaller pots, which can then go in a separate tray. They'll be easy to manage because they'll be a lot lighter. There's that as well. This tray is ridiculously heavy. So anyway, I might evolve my own way of doing Deisas. I don't want to lose them all. I love the blooms, they're gorgeous, and they're generally speaking, they are quite long lasting. You can get up to 2 months from a Deisa bloom, depending on the hybrid or whatever. Anyway, so we got a bit of thinking and a bit of work to do on those, so that will be tomorrow's work. I'm not doing it today. The trouble is we have something going on in the background that most of you think is stupid for an orchid person, but the Snooker World Championships are on, and they're on every day for some time now, probably up till, well, it'll be at least till this weekend, if not the following weekend. But it starts at 10 o'clock in the morning. They have a morning session as well as afternoon and evening. So I can't watch all of it. I will be selective, but there are certain players I like to see play, one of which has been knocked out in the first round. It's called the Crucible Curse, where people who've won it come back the next year and get hit straight out of the competition. I don't think there's been anybody who's won it twice consecutive years. Just the Crucible Curse. Crucible's the place where it's actually held. So that's that. What else? The work on the other plants in here will take place as and when, but that will be going on. I won't profess to be able to film all of it. You will get very fed up with watching me repotting plant after plant after plant. It can get tedious, but it will be good to film at least one or two of each. I mean, I'm sure some people are dying to see me repot a Cymbidium, so not yet. Blooms everywhere, not yet. But I've got a couple that have finished blooming now, so I will be keeping my eye on those for those lovely new growths to push up, and then we will start, because they're quite big jobbies, because you know they're literally the size of the plants. Right, so what have we got lurking in here then? I'm sure I'm going to mention some that some of you don't know. I've actually jotted them down because I'll always forget one if I don't. So these are not alphabetical, but they are roughly. There's a logic in my notes as to why they're in this order. Right, we start at the top with Brassicas, or Brassia types. Now, Brassia is one of the branches in the Oncidium alliance, so technically speaking, their care is the same as the warmer grower Oncidiums. They will put up with colder temperatures in the winter. They'll probably stop growing depending on how cold. They can put up with low temperatures. They prefer not to, but they can. That's the difference with some orchids. If some are treated to lower temperatures than they like, they will stall and sometimes deteriorate to the point where they never come back. So you need to go careful with minimum temperatures and the types of orchids. But Brassias will put up with cooler temps than they would like, but they come into intermediate. I would like to think of them as at the warmer end of intermediate. Unfortunately, they don't get that because I can't do those higher minimum temperatures during the winter months. I can't afford that level of energy usage, I just can't do it. I've got two actual Brassias and a hybrid that I've split. So there's two of the same thing. So I haven't got many, it's not a big deal. The Cattleya Alliance, I haven't got many of those. Most of those died because they didn't like the cooler temperatures and the change of environment round here, on top of a bleach treatment that went wrong and scale. So they didn't exactly stand a chance really, did they? And most succumbed. I still have a couple left. But in the Cattleya Alliance, the ones I've got the most of are the Prosthechias, and I've got 4 or 5 of those. But nonetheless, the whole Cattleya Alliance is not many. Again, they're intermediate, would prefer to be up the warmer end. So next we've got the Coelogynes. Now we've recently done those to death, so I'm not going to go into a big deal with those. But that's the first genus that we've got to that I can safely say most are cool growers. Some of them come into the cold category, and if they don't get that cold in the winter months, sort of a dormant type phase with a chill, then they won't bloom very well. So there are other orchids that come into that category. But that's not all Coelogynes. Some of them will put up with the cold, but don't care how cold, if you see what I mean. They don't need it, they live with it, and it's mostly when they're dormant anyway. The one thing with Coelogynes though is that if they are dormant and nothing's growing, there's no root activity, bulbs are mature, there's no new growths, no flower spikes pushing up, if they're just not doing anything, don't keep them wet. They will rot, the roots will rot quite easily if they're wet, especially when it's cold. So just go steady with that. Mine don't seem to be doing bad, including the rogue one that got stuck on a mount. That's behind me, here. And no, I didn't forget the little one. Those of you who bailed out early in that mounting video, there was a little piece came off. It was actually buried in the pot. And it turned out that it did actually have a reasonable root on it. And I said in the video, no, I'm not potting it up. But because I mounted it, right at the very end I remembered the little piece and I mounted that little piece as well, so we didn't lose it. Those of you who bailed out early don't know that. Right, so that's those. Cymbidiums, I like the Coelogynes, I've gone mad with these, despite their size, but we did get an influx from the Wisley show, from Mathers, of miniatures. I got 3 new ones and they're all miniatures. And as long as I come across some interesting miniatures now and again, I will still possibly add to the collection. But the collection's getting almost as big as I can handle because they've all got to go outside, probably in less than a month's time. And I need to get on with the wheels on this staging so that they can go outside. Otherwise we may have a catastrophe like we did last time. But, you know, they do cause me problems because of the going outside, and when they're outside you've got the environmental problems as well as the creepy crawly, you know, issues, or slidey issues more than creepy crawlies. Yeah, I mean they do cause issues. You get long, you know, cool, rainy periods. You can't really feed them. So they're wet all the time and you don't get a chance to get good feed into them. They're already more than wet enough, if not too wet. So, you know, you've got those environmentals to worry about. And then you get, you know, we tend to see a heat wave in our country. Those probably think that's, oh, how spring-like when we call it a heat wave. But for us, yeah, a heat wave is 30 plus, yeah. And when you get periods like that drag on, it's difficult for the plants that are cool growers to actually do well, and especially as that's their growing time, if you know what I mean. So we shall see, but there's some repotting to do. We tried the orchid bloom just on the Cymbidiums as their spikes were progressing, and I'm reasonably certain that we got brighter blooms. I won't say more of them, but that could be the previous growing season's fault. And I know, I'm almost sure for a fact that I brought them in too soon. I got a bit panicky as the autumn set in and the colder nights started setting in, that I didn't want to lose them. So I brought them in, and they need that chill. Well, the ones that bloom in winter into early spring need that chill as the colder nights come in from autumn. They need those low temperatures. It's what triggers the embryo spikes. And in theory, if your plant's blooming size, or it was the previous year, the new growths that you grow in a growing season should all bloom. And in a really strong plant, some of those new bulbs might even produce 2 spikes. So you shouldn't get new growths with no blooms if they've got the right level of feed and the frequency and everything's right for them in the growing season, and they get that chill down. So I mean, I've got one that's a summer bloomer. It's the only one I've got that hasn't bloomed yet, and it's one of my biggest plants. There's no blooms. The spikes are in there, they're lurking, they're pushing on, but it was bought in the summer in bloom, so that is its season. That is not affected by a cool down in autumn. It has no effect on it at all. So what triggers those into bloom, I don't know really. It's probably the light level and the increase in temperature from winter through spring, something like that. But anyway, so Cymbidiums along with Coelogynes, we've now got quite a lot of both. Dendrobiums, we've got a lot less than we once had, a lot less. That was my biggest genus at one point. More of those possibly than the rest added together at one point, but not anymore. I've got a few Nobiles still. I've got 2 of the black hair types. One's here, the other one's up the back there. That's in bud. That's just got some buds I noticed last time I watered it. And there's a couple of odd other types lurking around, but not many. So those have come right down. You can't do a care guide to Dendrobiums because there's too many different ones. I mean, the Nobiles need a certain annual cycle of events to take place to get them to bloom well. The black hair types in the main are classed as warm growers. They don't like getting cold. Well, the 2 that I've got put up with it and have done, well, one of them's done this. What the other one's going to do I'm not sure about yet. But I've only got 2 of the black hair types. I've got 3 or 4 Nobiles, one of which is a duplicate. Kiki's off of a mother plant. And just a couple of others. There's a few mounted ones. There's a couple of Ophyllums behind me. They haven't even started their new growth yet. It's the middle of April. New growth should have been away in March. You should be pushing on now. Not a sign of life in those. So I'm never going to get long canes on them. Do you know, I've just noticed a bud on one of the canes. Well, there you go. And there's a Jenkins CI over there that Lynn gave me, but you know, and there's a couple of other mounted Dendrobiums as well. Oh, actually there's another Nobile mounted over there. It's the true Nobile, the species, the variety Cooksonianum or Cook Summit or other anyway. Not an instruction. Right, then Deces we've already had a chat about. Although there's 20 pots here, there is not 20 pots full of growing Deces. I think there's possibly only 14 that have got plants that are obviously growing okay in the pots. Some of them are borderline, a couple. One of them was green last time I changed the water and now it's gone, so that's another pot possibly lost. So those are we've already done them. We've then got Masdevallias and Restrepias. Those are together because of the watering cycle. They come together, the cooler, shadier set. Others have been added to that set along the way, but nonetheless, M does come next effectively after D. There's nothing in between. So Masdevallias, mainly cooler growers. Some are warmth tolerant. I don't know of any actual warm growing Masdevallias. There probably are some. It's a massive genus. Yeah, I mean, I've got 6, and those 6 are sort of doing okay. Some are doing well, and the rest are at least okay. So, and then I've got Restrepias. I think I've got 6 of those as well. Those go together. So, and then in that cooler, shadier set, we've got some Miltoniopsis, which I have failed miserably with year upon year upon year, until now, when I think I might get some to hang in there long enough to get a reasonable root system, at which point they're safe here because of my lower temperatures. The only thing that might spoil them is my humidity is a bit lower than they would like during some of the year, but it's mainly in the winter when it's quite cool, which does suit them. Again, the Masdevallias and Restrepias would prefer possibly a bit higher humidity. Now those are those then. I've also got a couple of Miltonias. Now, those of you who have been around a while will have seen me break up larger plants, take the new growths off and put them around the outside of a flat pot. Sounded like a good idea. The pot is too big for each individual piece, so they stayed wet too long, and some of those have now been thrown out. I've got two left, one of which was an indirect present from Insa. He organised it as a gift on one of my visits to Burnham, so it was presented to me. Have one of them. So I've still got that one. That's going on a mount soon because it's not doing so well in the pot, so we give it a try on a mount. And I've got one of the pots with all the small plants around the outside. Not all of them are doing well, but a couple aren't bad. They're worth taking out and putting on a mount. So we've got those to do. So we've only got two left of those. Miltoniopsis I've got, I've forgotten how many now, 4 I think. 1, 2, 3, yeah, 4. I will possibly get some more if I see some nice plants with good roots. I'm still after that Rosella Xanthina, the yellow one. It's a variety of one of the species, of which there's only 5 or 6. One of those has a yellow variety, a named variety. I'd still love to get a good one of them. Like hen's teeth, they are, trying to come across them. Spice Exotic have had them in the past. They've not necessarily been very good plants. Problem with their plants is they come from Ecuador in Ecuador. So they've travelled halfway across the world bare rooted, which doesn't do the likes of Miltoniopsis any good at all. So they take quite a bit of recovering. You could be lucky and just get one that just takes off in your environment. But then you've got the rest of the Oncidiums, the rest of the alliance, which includes intergenerics. There's a good few of those dotted around, but the largest number within those are the old Odontoglossum types. They're all basically called Oncidiums now. They were all reclassified, but they are still a type. And they do like cool conditions. They're cloud forest dwellers, cool, a bit more humid than perhaps some of the others. Don't like heat, don't like bright light, all that sort of stuff. And I do have quite a few of those. There's one up there in that corner of the picture there. That's the sort I'm on about. So those are those. Paphiopedilums, again, they never seem to do very well around the other place. At one point I had quite a collection, mostly hybrids, and I only ever seemed to manage to get one fan on the go. So I'd buy one in bloom and it would have an old fan that was destined to fade away and the new one with the bloom, and that's what I got. And then eventually it would start growing a new fan which would move on and produce a bloom, and the old one would die. And I never managed to get a bigger plant than that because the old bit always died off. The ones I've got now, I've got a couple of clumps, as I call them, like the blackjack. I think, if you split that plant up, you'd probably have a dozen. And I think I've got some buds on that one as well. But yes, Paphiopedilums, I've got a few now, and some of them are doing well. And I've got one that's just hanging in there. It's possibly going to get chucked out because it just won't grow. And others that the plant doesn't look too bad, but the roots are awful. And they just won't grow new roots. But they're hanging in there. That's those. The Pleonies, I've only got two. They came from Burnham's at Wisley, and it was the only two they had, or I would have bought more. Because when you start looking to buy them, if you go on eBay, first of all, when you buy them dormant as a bulb, you've got no guarantee you are getting what you're buying. In other words, what they've called it is not necessarily what you're going to get. You know, they could be saying, oh, this is a rare one or something or other. Bear in mind it's not going to bloom for quite a long time. It'd be difficult to go back to them in 2 months' time and say, that one you sold me isn't right. They're not going to have anything to do with you, are they? So you've got to go careful buying Pleonies, reputable sellers only. Or buy them in bloom. If you buy them in bloom, you'll pay a lot more for them. Now, the two I got from Burnham's were both less than £10. I have yet to see any others less than 15, and those were relatively common ones that were dormant, not potted. So you just get an envelope with a bulb in. They tend to be sold as single bulbs. Occasionally you see the bulbils for sale, which is like the little bulblets that grow around the older bulbs as they push on. You hope for lots of those because they'll grow on and become flowering sized bulbs. That's how bulbs work. Anyway, I've got two. Mathers, I believe, are pausing, so I don't think they're going to be selling many because they've got loads of them. Well, they've got a whole polytunnel full, which I'll be filming on Saturday. But they look best in a pan with lots of blooms, because the blooms come before the leaves. That's how they look great. But to get lots, you've either got to spend an absolute fortune buying the flowering size bulbs and then pot them up, or you've got to get bulbils and grow them on, which is obviously the cheaper way to do it. I've got a friend that's got some, didn't actually say how many, but there are bulbils that are going to become available to me autumn time. Mathers, I believe, are taking a year off selling to grow, to bulk up the numbers, to make sure that they are genuinely surplus. If you've got a very rare cross that you've only got like one pan that's got 5 or 6 flowering size bulbs in, if you lose that, if that gets a virus or something like that, you've got nothing left. So it's better to get as many bulbils going and bulk up the actual number of each type, then you know you've got some surplus ones. Apparently Pleonies are very prone to viruses, especially those brought in by insects. See, a lot of people chuck them outside. Well, they're exposed to insects then. And a lot of it is, what did Jim, I don't know, it was David that was talking about it. Potato virus apparently affects Pleonies quite badly. So if you've got your spuds growing in the garden and you put your Pleonies outside, don't put them together. Right, so that's those. That's a new one for me, Pleonies. Phalaenopsis. Those that have been around on my channel since the start will have heard me say many times, I don't grow Phalaenopsis, same as I don't grow Cymbidiums. Well, I do now. And I shouldn't do, because I can't keep them. I have to keep them in the house because it's far too cold out here in the winter. And that's still not warm enough, really, for them to do well and thrive. But the hybridisation that's been done with the Phalaenopsis, they have been turned into quite tolerant house plants. So they don't need the brightest of light that some of the orchids need. They don't need the high humidity. But they do better in warmer temperatures than I've got. So I won't get those huge big spikes with 24 blooms on because the plants aren't strong enough, because they can't grow well enough. But they're doing okay. I don't lose them hand over fist or anything. They do block the light in the kitchen. I go out there sometimes and think, oh, it's dark in here, and put the light on. And I think it's lunchtime. Why is it dark? It's because the window's totally blocked by Phalaenopsis. I've got them in 2 rows. I've got the windowsill, and then I made a shelf that can be removed. It's not fixed, it's just sat there, 2 legs at each end and a flat bit. But I have some. And then Vandaceous types. You could say I've got 3 actual plants, and that's 3 separate genera. I have an actual Vanda. It has beautiful big bluey purple blooms on. if it's ever going to bloom again, but it stops growing completely in the winter. It's far too cold. I've probably got enough light for it to bloom, but it's never going to grow well, not in these temperatures. So I have an actual Vanda. I also have a Renanthera. That's never bloomed. So it's a relatively small plant. It's sort of growing. It has actually grown a new leaf in the winter time. One singular. So it is growing, but I don't think it's ever going to do well. They're warm to hot growers. Yeah? And a recent acquisition, I've now got a Sarcogilus, which is a vandaceous type of orchid. So we have that one as well. It's actually got its first flower opening. I'll hold that up to the camera in a minute. But it's not fully open yet. It might be better to wait a bit, but you can have a quick look anyway. So that's those. And then the bottom of the alphabet, as low as you can go without falling off into the numbers, work that out for yourself, is Zygopetalums. Now I've got 3. I've got a species that I got from Burnham's that has yet to be repotted. Probably doesn't need to be, because it would have been potted up. It's one of their own seedlings. It would have been potted up at the time it got to the size of that pot, if you see what I mean, because you increase the pot size as the plants increase in size. So it won't have been in that pot that long, and it's in Burnham's bark, which I believe the bark they use now is Melcourt. I'm not sure, probably. It's getting difficult to get bark. Some suppliers are saying we just can't get any from anywhere at the moment. There's a combination of various things, heat waves, killing trees literally, and forest fires, wildfires, just taking out whole plantations and stuff, so difficult. Anyway, the other 2 that I've got are both hybrids. One of them is not named, and the other one is the Louisendorf, and neither of those are doing very well at all. They're on the list to have their media changed. See if they'll pick up a bit, so we'll get to those eventually. The work that needs doing on these is not necessarily going to get done in anything like alphabetical order, but those are the genera that live here. Yeah, I've always said that each year I'd like to start a new genus and see how I do with it. Just get a couple and see how they fare. Well, this was a new genus at one point. If you take away the Hannah's one, the one with the virus that I've had for a long time, if you take that away, because that was never allowed near the rest of the orchids anyway, then this is a relatively new genus, mainly started at the beginning of last year or towards the end of the previous year, so that was new. What else? The Miltoniopsis is revisiting one that I've done before and failed miserably at. So that's that. What else is new? The Deesers are new as of last year. I won't say they're a major success. They're not at the moment, but we are thinking about how to change that. What else? Let's just come down the list here. Paphiopedilums, relatively new genus, of which I've now got a few, but it's not one that I've had, long term, shall we say. That restarted with Blackjack, visit to Burnham's, and I can't morally walk out of Burnham's with nothing in my hands. I have to buy something to help support the nursery. I just have to. I've known Sarah many, many years, and I do what I can. And that just caught my fancy. I didn't have any other Paphiopedilums, and I thought, oh, let's give that one a try. It looks like quite a healthy plant. We'll give it a go and see what happens. Well, there you go. Sometimes you shouldn't do those sorts of things because it starts a whole thing off. Like getting the new Cymbidium and then deciding, well, actually, I could possibly get a few more in. Then you end up making some staging and they take over your world. Think what this place is going to look like when this staging and all the plants on it have gone and they're outside. I'll be able to just walk round and round and round in all the space that I've got. I might even do that just to sort of see how it goes. Anyway, that's what I've got. Temperature wise, they all get the same. That's what happens when you've got a single environment like this. The only way I could double up and get two separate environments really is to have some sort of curtained off area, you know, actually some sort of framework with some polythene sheeting or something to actually separate a place off, which I'm not prepared to do. So they all get the same temperature range, minimum of 12 for part of the winter, and then as the lighter days start to show, we bump that up to 13 and then 14, and it's currently set at 15, so my night temperature drops down to 14. As soon as the thermostat touches 14, it comes straight on and puts it straight back up to 15, and when it touches 16 it switches off. So that's where it's set now, and there will come a time when I will shut the heater down. Not yet, not in this country. Probably going to be mid-May. It's a time when you don't need heating in the house anymore. It's, you know, you get up in the morning and you know it's going to warm up. It'll be okay, and also it's warm enough to go outside without your fur coat and hat on. So we get to that point eventually. But yeah, and then again in the autumn, as the colder nights start setting in, I keep my eye on the night temperature, you know, minimum, maximum, all that sort of stuff. And as it starts to drop down, and I'd rather it didn't drop down any lower, then we reinstate the heater, and that's the sort of annual cycle. When the heater goes, that also disconnects the fan, and I will connect the little humidifier up to the humidistat with the fan, so that you know, when it'll be a bit warmer in here daytime wise. I don't want extra humidity at night, only daytime. And the humidistat will fire up the humidifier and the fan will come on at the same time to make sure it doesn't all sink to the floor and leave corners that haven't changed. So the fan will do the same as the fan does with the heater. It distributes the change in the air to all the corners of the grow room. Otherwise the heater would heat up this door behind me, because it's sat on the floor pointing at this door, because I don't want it pointing at any of the plants, so it points in the gap. And the fan in that heater is not that strong, so the airflow is starting to reduce after about a metre, maybe 1.33 metres. So the speed of the heat coming out of the heater has dropped right off by the time it gets anywhere near plants, and the large circulating fan is flying backwards and forwards, distributing that heat to all the corners. So that's the way we work. And it had to evolve from the other place to this place. Didn't get it right for a while. I'm happy with the environment now. It's as good as it's going to get in this place. I don't get the excessive heat I used to get. I don't need as many gadgets. Around the other place, when the sun came out on that glass, I used to have 2 big circulating fans, an inlet fan near the floor, and an extractor fan near the roof. All 4 of those would be going, and Hurricane Hector would be on almost all day. So all 5 units would be on for like 12, 13, 14 hours in the summertime when the sun was out. It used to cost an awful lot of money. Now, okay, the energy was a lot cheaper in those days than it is now. But anyway, I did say I'd show you that Sarcogilus. As I say, it's not fully open yet, but one thing I have noticed, which I'd forgotten, because I have had a couple of these in the past, but they failed miserably in the heat. They are tiny, and I probably won't be able to get it to focus very well, but the patterning that you get on the inside of the bloom is also on the outside, on the back of the flower. So that dotted purple pattern is exactly the same as the pattern on the inside. Now this will open, it's a tulip shape at the moment, it will open up and go a lot flatter than that. There's only 3 buds on this spike. The other spikes were taken off to put the strength into creating roots. There's actually quite a few plantlets on this plant now. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plants here, or plantlets, because they're probably all connected to the one. And then you've got the original plant that's pushing on. That's grown a new leaf and it's growing another one. So this is not failing. Well, the others didn't do very well at all around the other place. They don't like the heat. So there we go, a Sarcogilus bloom. I will be getting more of those come the autumn time, because Lynn has access to somebody up north who grows absolutely spectacular ones and splits them. So she's going to get a load, and some that she's got a while back will get to the point where they can be split up as well. So that's a species, that's Fitzgeraldii, I think it is. It's one of the ones that I believe Burnhams have had, whether they've still got them or not. And the other species that Burnhams have had is Hartmannii, which I did have one of those once, but didn't last. Again, heat problems. So we don't get heat problems now, but for some of my orchids we get cold problems where they would prefer to be warmer. So they don't do well through the winter time. But as long as they hang in there and push on, you know, during the growing season, they can stay. So that's where we are. And as we always do on the Sunday, thanks for supporting the channel in whatever way you see fit. The financial support is membership of the channel, not a very efficient way of helping me out on the grounds that YouTube take over 30% of your hard-earned money before I even get it. The Patreon site is a much better way to do it. They don't take much at all. I think it's about 11%, something like that, so it's a much lower fee. And then there's the Buy Me a Coffee, the one-off type donations, and they've got a very, very low fee as well. So yeah, those are the financial types of things. Plus, I don't know what it's called, but there is a way of leaving a comment on a video and making a donation at the same time. But although that's very nice to see in a list of comments, because you get a big banner heading with the donation on it, again, it's not the most efficient way of doing it, because YouTube will have a third of that. Whereas if you did it via Buy Me a Coffee, you know, much more of your hard-earned money would reach me to go into the maintenance for this. But watching the videos, watching some of the adverts, and probably one of the things that makes YouTube look at this channel and the other channels you watch is that. The thumbs up. Not even the subscriptions are that important nowadays. Not to YouTube. They are still to some subscribers. They judge their growth by subscribers. I don't anymore. I like to see the number going up, yes, and it does indicate a form of growth, but it doesn't show a total. In as much as if I've got whatever it is, 16,500 subscribers, I don't get 16,500 views, do I? And there are many, many people that are subscribed to this channel that never watch a video, or perhaps watch one in a blue moon. Otherwise my view counts would be a lot higher, and they're not. So a lot of people have left the channel for whatever reason, your choice obviously, and have not unsubscribed. They've just left their subscription running. I mean, it's free, it doesn't cost you anything. But that's why I don't take a huge amount of notice. I just like to make sure it's going up and not down, which it does steadily go up. It is a steady progress. It's around 80 or 90 a month, which sounds like a lot, but in YouTube terms, that's hardly worth noticing. They don't notice that sort of level of increase. You know, what they're looking for is thousands a month, or thousands a week even. That's what they watch out for. But they do take notice of that, the thumbs up. That's retention and engagement. Somebody's bothered to start watching the video, watched some of it, and said they've liked it by doing that. YouTube likes that sort of thing. So there you go. Have you done it yet? Come on. It's just there under your nose. It's not difficult. And that again costs nothing. So thanks for all the support in whatever shape or form, especially the financial support. It does allow me to go to shows and come home with little carrier bags to do bagging videos, and you get to see some nice new orchids and things. So you do get to share in that type of support. It's not like a selfish thing. We all share the new orchids, and it does allow me to get to the shows, the transport and everything. So it's good stuff and it's greatly appreciated. We wouldn't be out and about anywhere near as much without it, or we wouldn't be coming home as much, let's put it that way. So I will see you next time for whatever. I'm just going to have a quick look. If you're still here, you don't need me to tell you. 55 minutes. So this was a long one. Some are not. This one was. So if you are still here, thank you very, very much. You've got nothing else to do. Some people I know are tied. Some people literally don't get out and about much. And YouTube is one of their main forms of entertainment. So if I'm part of your world, then thank you. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.